World of Darkness holds a lot of very cool supernatural creatures. We got vampires, werewolves, demons, ghosts, all that shit. But what if you want to play a wizard, and not the lame fake wizards? I'm talking about a real ass wizard. Well, that's where Mage the Ascension comes in. This game is insane. The reason this video took me longer than a lot of my normal stuff is because it requires a lot of context. Because if you're describing elements of Mage the Ascension without context, you sound insane. The World of Darkness, and especially how it's gone recently, is trying to be a much more grounded supernatural horror setting. 5th edition really took it in that specific aspect, but really the strongest elements of World of Darkness are very interpersonal horror aspects. With something like Vampire is very, you're in a city. It's smaller stakes, it's street level. Werewolf, you go a little farther, there's a little bit of interdimensional travel. You are fighting against the forces of the worm. In Mage, there's a lot more cosmological bullshit going on. If you want an excellent example of how this all hits, Alphabusa on his channel, there is like the one actual play I enjoy, the Norfolk Wizard game. This series rules in understanding what the fuck is happening with Mage.
That's probably what they want me to think, though. Buddy, get out here!
The door opens wide. The monkey has a deagle.
And with Mage the Ascension, it's always the question, which edition should I play? I know that there are edition wars against Revised and 20th. Personally, I am more familiar with Mage the Ascension 20th Anniversary Edition, as that's the one I've read. So for people who actually have understanding of the system, please let me know which one you think is better. I am actually curious why the argument is there. And as well, while you're down there, I like these big videos, and maybe I'll talk more about Mage the Ascension. There's a lot more I could cover, which I'll do if this video does well. But don't get me wrong, I would love to. I just don't want to prioritize a bunch of videos people wouldn't like. So, with the setting of Mage, the best way I can try to describe it, it's very Gnostic. It's like a lot of Gnostic thought, which, to explain, Gnosticism is a concept where reality itself is constructed like a prison by some malevolent entity. A lot of this comes from older Gnostic Christianity, these offshoots, which are really fascinating to look into, which is literally Earth is a prison created by a malevolent god. And if you've ever played any of the Shin Megami Tensei games, you understand half of this. They ripped all that from Gnosticism, and I guess Persona. I don't know why I said Persona like that, those games are fine. But it tracks like this in Mage the Ascension, because in Mage, reality is not what we think it is. Reality itself is fake. It is constructed around the belief of a lot of different people and beings. Group belief or consensus is very important in reality, as that's why things are the way they are, because we believe that they should be this way. There aren't, dragons and shit flying around because we know that dragons aren't real. However, we are asleep to the truth, literally called sleepers for those that don't know the reality of reality. Mages are those who awaken to the fact that the world is built of these constructed beliefs. They can awaken in a myriad of ways. A lot of times it's a bit traumatic and it's brought on by something. Everybody has the capacity to awaken, it's just kept in line by the powers that be. But once you awaken, you see the world completely differently. Your entire life you've been asleep and suddenly everything is different. You can't look at things the exact same way, and now you also know the fact that reality is malleable. Therefore, couldn't we change it ourselves? Which is really the core concept of mages. Another way I can relate it, it's a little bit like Chim from the Elder Scrolls. Mages in Mage the Ascension are essentially reality warpers. They're not in their cool wizard tower, reading tomes, casting spells like that. This is actually an important line in the sand to draw at the two forms of magic that we see in World of Darkness. There's magic, spelled normally, and then there's magic with a K. The spelled normally version of magic is the stuff that we see in a lot of other settings. Vampire the Masquerade is an easy one to make, because those vampires, they have magic. They have like blood sorcery. They're casting spells. And this is true. They are casting a form of magic. And the best way to describe this is like, let's say you're following a recipe. You're cooking. That kind of magic is strictly following the recipe. There's a set of things you have to do to achieve some effect. Magic with a K is like You have a bunch of ingredients and you're free forming a dish. You are just coming up with something on the fly. Reality itself is built up of quintessence. It is all energy that is malleable. And with Awakening, you can now see this quintessence, and you are gaining access to the ability to do this with Arete and from your avatar. The avatar is like a shard of power. It is something, not really known exactly what it is, that's trying to guide you to greater power. The avatar can be viewed as many different things, and as such, it'll be viewed and manifested as many different things. It can be literally like a guardian angel, a demonic entity from like a demon pact. It can be like full-on Great Old One warlock. It can take lots of different shapes and sizes, and it's trying to guide you towards a concept of ascension, and as well, getting much better with magic and understanding how the world works. Though, it's really important to state, avatars are not good things. They're not morally good. The actual whims and wants of avatars changes and can sometimes be very detrimental to you as a mage. Sometimes they can be literally trying to take you to a path of like damnation. They can be tempting you. There is something. However, mages have all this power. That doesn't mean they can just go crazy. Otherwise, you know, like every city street would just be a bunch of wizards, big top hats throwing fireballs at each other. That's not how this works, because reality has its consensus. The people believe things, and as such, reality doesn't really like you to play outside the guardrails. It gets a little annoyed if you start going a little too crazy. So magic needs to be cast in a way that it's a bit believable to a passerby. There are a lot of different implements to doing this, like the one I always use. Say for example, you want to throw a fireball at somebody. You do that out in the open, people are gonna be like, whoa, hold up a sec, fireballs? Impossible. But if you reached into your bag and pulled out a flamethrower and started shooting, well, that's okay. Like, yeah, that's what flamethrowers do. Granted, the flamethrower you have was literally summoned inside of your bag and has no fuel in it, but you're manifesting fire in some aspect. This also plays in the fact that mages all view magic itself as something different. There are some people 100% who view magic as like spell tome and you're learning something, you're studying. Order of Hermes does this. They're like classical European wizards. But there's a lot of other views of it. You can view it as some sort of divine blessing. You could even view it as technology. There are hacker wizards. They hack the world. But the actual reality clapping back at you is known as paradox. Paradox is a system that accumulates on a wizard the more they utilize vulgar magics, which is any magic that is strictly unbelievable. Like I mentioned, to get around this, you need to make it believable, and you gotta have implements. There's actually a really fun example I love from Hunter the Reckoning V5 like core book. At the end, they have stat blocks for a bunch of the other settings, and there is a wizard in there who is really upset at hunters. He wants to get revenge, and his entire like magic abilities are focused around summoning weapons. So like he's wearing a big trench coat and duffel bags, and he's just pulling guns out of it. Like he can just spawn infinite guns if he wants to, but that's the method he casts it to avoid paradox. Because paradox is bad. You do not want to accumulate a lot of paradox, because if you get a little too uppity, reality is going to create paradox spirits that will come beat your ass or take you to reality jail. Not a joke. There are paradox dimensions that you will be tossed into. These are dimensions of like your element, your senses. It could literally just be a parallel dimension that is like a hole in the ground you're tossed into. It's the push and pull of using magic while also maintaining consensus and avoiding paradox that I think makes this game's actual magic system one of the most fascinating. I play a lot of different tabletop games. I'm a huge fan of the hobby, and I really love game design in tabletop. I think it's a really fascinating subject. Mage the Ascension has my absolute favorite magic system. Essentially, all magic is done through spheres. These spheres of power and influence are the representation of your character's knowledge of the metaphysical. How does your character perceive the powers that they're using? How do they channel it? And there's a decent amount and even some variance based on specific faction. Just some basic stuff like life, mind, spirit, forces, all that stuff. These are all different wide groupings of power. I'll single in on one. Forces. Forces is the large subsect of power that is physics, energies. It is essentially the transfer of matter and energy in our world. Just from like the little descriptor here, there's a lot of subsects this falls into. And each pip is the thing that represents your actual abilities in this game. Much like every other World of Darkness game, each pip is giving you some sort of ability. VTM being the best example, because each dot you get a power. That's just giving you an ability you can now use. In Mage, that is dictating your character's specialty in this knowledge. At rank 1, you are essentially able to sense whatever it is. Whatever power you have, you can now see it and sense it. Forces, you can modify your perception to see things like infrared or just different forms of energy you normally wouldn't be able to see. It is a lot later that you can do some of the cool shit. Like every magic system, I imagine you want to cast Fireball. Well, that's possible. It's a little hard, because you have to manifest energy from nothing, which is where the other aspect of this comes in, because you actually combine multiple levels of your spheres to do things. Like, do you want to summon some form of element? Well, you're going to have a little bit of prime to actually bring it into the universe. Or do you just want to turn somebody into a gust of flame, killing them? You're going to need life or matter. Like, it's this aspect that I think is so cool, and it's built even more because you gotta be using some form of instrument. You can't just be casting this willy-nilly. A lot of the effects I'm talking about are really vulgar magic. There's a lot of methods that you can do this. Like, it's open to your creativity. You want to do a lot of damaging effects? I don't know, have a gun, man. You can still do it, just have a gun, say there's special ammo. An example I have, I will expand on this specific faction later, but my absolute favorite faction and my favorite sub-faction in said faction, for a chronicle I was working on for Vampire the Masquerade, I was going to include a syndicate technocrat. They're economic wizards. And specifically, he was going to be involved in like internet service providers and telecommunications. His actual instrument for magic was Venmo payments. He had Venmo and PayPal and all that. He would send money off and an effect would occur. It's as broad as that. It can be very, very broad, which this is my shit. I love me a very, very crunchy rules. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is my favorite tabletop game for a reason, but I also like games that give you mechanical ways of expressing a roleplay thing you were going to do anyways. That's a thing I adore. I'm in a very roleplay heavy group. This appeals to me. It appeals to our style. But all of this has to like build to something, correct? Like, what's the point? And what is that ascension thing in the actual name? Well, ascension is mysterious and we don't actually know what it means. Just a brief aside, I have read the phrase of some form of, we don't exactly know what this is. It is nebulous. It could be anything. I read that a lot. Granted, this is a tabletop game and World of Darkness handles a lot of things in a way where you as like a storyteller can do a lot. Especially Mage. Mage has a lot of events that are really like, you could run this all these different ways. Like the Avatar Storm, that's a really big one. That can be in a state of actively happening, not happening, or has never happened. But like, I get the reason why, but there are a lot of things I cannot expound upon because there is no canon information, and anything else would be essentially how I'd run it in my own game. But anyways, Ascension. We don't know what it is. This is viewed as many different things. This is like achieving nirvana, going to heaven, maybe even just ceasing to exist as a person, and now you're matter and energy in space, being able to do whatever you want. It is a little hard to report what Ascension is after you've done it, but everyone has different methods of wanting to achieve Ascension in the ways they believe that Ascension can be done. That is what all the traditions and different magical groups, that's what they all fight and bicker over. Though that's not like the only ending that you can get as a mage. There are a couple others. You can get to this higher state, and like right before reaching enlightenment, you can choose to reincarnate. This can be as anything. You could be an animal, you could be another person, you could be an angel, you could be a cyborg, but you're reborn, and it's the concept of being a bodhisattva, the person who stays behind from enlightenment to help others achieve it. It's also not to say that reincarnation is really only for mages. It's actually a thing. Reincarnation exists in the World of Darkness, just mages can harness it a little differently. Though I will say, because this is World of Darkness, there's a lot more bad ends that you can reach, like dying horribly. You could also reach a state where you want to die, known as Gulgul, where your avatar is destroyed, severed, or breaks away from you. Now you are back to being a sleeper. You have no magic, you understand that the world is something different, and you can never access it again. Or you can go the route of the quiet, which, when reading this is a personal fear of mine. Like, I was unsettled while reading this. I don't like this concept, but I do at the same time because it's very scary. The quiet is magical madness. You are reaching and opening your mind to metaphysical knowledge that a lot of people cannot handle, or they're going too far, too fast into magic outside of their capabilities. So their mind breaks completely. This can be shown as a lot of different things, like something is snapped, something has changed, or in very extreme senses, your body comatose while your actual soul is trapped in your own mindscape. I hate that. I hate that so much. It's also described in the book as one really bad, really big acid trip. It can be a lot of different things, and it's rough. Normally right here, I would talk about like the timeline of stuff, which there is a timeline. You have to do a little bit of hunting for it. Back in the day, mages, wizards, that was all a thing. In like caveman era, it was a lot more open. Reality was a lot more malleable because it was shifted around those ideas that, like, yeah, fantasy stuff exists. Yeah, wizards and mages, they're a thing. Though over time, this did change, as originally a lot of wizards just had different methods of believing in ascension, or the ways they use their magic. However, in the 1300s, the Order of Reason came around. A bunch of mages specifically decided that there needed to be a main consensus for the world, as every single area had different belief systems. So like, you'd go to a different country or continent, and then suddenly the rules are different, which is rough. That's not good. So this group, later they would rebrand as the technocracy, decided to bring around a age of order, reason, and logic. They wanted to introduce technology to humanity. This technology is magic. Like your phone, your computer, that is magic. How else could you explain right now you are watching a visual image of me broadcast at a different time in a different place? How in the world are you doing that? There's funny magic energy going through your outlet. Get real. And if you actually know how those things work, nuh-uh, magic. They had to introduce this slowly over time because Paradox didn't like this. It was kind of snapping back at them for making it, but eventually they were able to brute force and manipulate the world to their whim. Consensus, as it is right now, is that of science and technology. And to do this, there was now a wizard Illuminati that's really controlling all this, which is like the central core story with Mage the Ascension is like the Ascension War. They're following the meta plot at least. Technocracy is in a position of, they've won. Seemingly they have won. The 9 traditions, which are the more traditional mages, they want to go back and they want to reignite their old majesty. There's a lot more going on, but that's like broad strokes. And there are events that are very pivotal in the Mage timeline, like 1999, the Avatar Storm happened, where a technocrat was setting off a soul nuke in the underworld. He was down there, and at the same time, the undead Wraith Legion set off their own nuke because they wanted to blow up the first vampiric city, and both explosions hit at like the same time and ripped reality like asunder. And now the avatars are in between real space of like matter and dimensions, and it is really hard to extra dimensional travel. And a lot of the big players of like Mage got cut off completely from our world. So it's a lot. And like I said, it sounds insane, but a lot of these like events either can play out like they did and like they mentioned in the book, they can be on the horizon, they could have never happened, they could have already happened. There's a lot. The long-winded point I'm trying to make is that unlike some of the other games, the actual timeline of Mage doesn't matter as much as you are in modern day being a mage, and there's a lot of problems you got to deal with and a lot of crazy bullshit you got to deal with. So who cares what a bunch of wizards were doing 10,000 years ago? That is not fully my own opinion. That's something I was reading a lot of from storytellers. But there are a core number of players. There are the 9 traditions, technocracy, the disparate groups, there are the Marauders, and the Nefandi. Those are like the 5 main factions that are detailed in 20th Anniversary. Some of the editions have them under different names. I'm using the 20th edition stuff. I will be overviewing each of these factions. However, unlike some of the other tabletop stuff I have done, I am not going to go down every single sub-faction and subgroup. I can't do that. Because essentially what tradition or thing you pick, that's your class, essentially. World of Darkness has always been kind of wishy-washy with a class system, which is fun. I will be giving an overview and examples. I wish I could go longer. If this video does well enough, I will. First up is the 9 Traditions. The 9 Traditions are a group of mages who gathered together, finally, it took them a while, when the technocracy was really coming into effect. They were becoming very powerful, and the mages didn't like this because they wanted freedom. The 9 Traditions embody the concepts of freedom and becoming the best mage you can be, something the technocracy obviously didn't want. They don't fully get along, but with this organizational structure, they actually can communicate a lot better. Each of the groups inside of the 9 Traditions, which are literally 9 different groups, each of them embodies a different circle of magic, which is an understanding of a specific type of power. You want to cast a fireball, that is a circle of forces. You want to fuck with like time and fate, entropy. And as of now, the actual top brass of these traditions is gone. They left after the Avatar Storm to go deal with some secret stuff. So they are somewhere. Now the younger mages get to reevaluate the world. One of the main things they did pretty early on is really embrace these concepts of freedom and diversity in their actual groups. Because the traditions all come from different backgrounds. They come from all over the world. And this is an element I actually really enjoy. I've talked about this whenever it comes up in my World of Darkness videos. There is a tradition known as the Dream Speakers. The Dream Speakers were not handled the greatest, because essentially back in like earlier editions, they are basically best described as ethnic mages. They were mages. There was just kind of the catch-all for like, oh yeah, like shaman, voodoo stuff, like big concepts of animism, communing with spirits and souls. That is all over. So there's African traditions there's North American, like South American indigenous traditions, there's stuff from Asia, it's all over. So they were rebranded as the Nefandi, where now they are banding together, but they're really trying to work against and unshackle themselves from their history of oppression and colonization. They were hit really hard by a lot of those efforts, which funnily enough were a lot of times done by wizards. Mages were really involved in the slave trade. I enjoy this. I enjoy this a lot, specifically because I am a media conservationist. I believe if you put something out like artistically, it should be preserved. What I don't like is trying to erase things even if they were iffy. I am not a fan of erasing things from existence just because it's iffy. What I prefer is actually being able to integrate it into your worlds and setting. That's a much better retcon, and Mage does this so well because it fully says like, yeah, those old versions of the Dream Speakers, that's canon. That's how they were grouped, because the people who made the 9 Traditions and they had that sway just kind of shoved them all into one group. And then you can then change it to be like, well, now they're gaining a lot more autonomy and freedom. That's how you write shit instead of hiding it. I love it. I'm bringing this up and expanding on it because every once in a while I get some form of comment when I've talked about this exact situation in another World of Darkness thing. I'm not casting moral or value judgments on the people who wrote it. Honestly, I think White Wolf, they've tried throughout their entire careers of making these games. I think they try very hard. I do not blame somebody for writing something iffy in the 80s and 90s. Because, shock, surprise, it turns out if you have the internet, it's a lot easier to understand different cultures and types of people. But each of these 9 traditions, they embody some different circle of magic. Like the Nefandi, for example, that is spirit. A lot of concepts of communing with spirits or dimension walking, that's them. We also have the Thanatos, which are kind of hitting that necromancer vibe, but they're using entropy, which can embody, necromancy, but also can embody ideas of fate, luck, and chance. We have the Celestial Chorus, which are very divine level, like they're clerics, essentially. They believe in the One. The One is the source that the avatars come from. They used to be super Christian, but now they don't really care. They just want you to be monotheistic. That's really it. They're specifically all about Prime. Then there's Order of Hermes, which are very classical, like secret club, rich European style of wizards. If you want a wizard tower and throwing fireballs, they utilize force, like I mentioned before. The 9 traditions all want to return to the older golden age of magic, where they can be much freer and largely more important and not have to hide. Because that's the thing with World of Darkness, there are no like good groups. Sure, like some might seem better than others, but there's a lot of downsides. The 9 traditions, it's really written like their want is super selfish. And like we know with history, it's going to fuck over a lot of people. Like a lot of normal sleepers are going to be fucked over because the 9 traditions want to be individually powerful and they want to ascend in their own way. Unlike the technocracy. The technocracy are the cause of the world we see today. All the technology, our focus on science, that is them. Because they believe in a concept of worldly ascension. They do not like the idea that mages individually will ascend. That is selfish. If mages can ascend, they want humanity to ascend, and they want humanity to be protected from the supernatural. Those are entities that they dub reality deviants, and they work really hard to scrub any knowledge or just trace of them, including murder. They will kill reality deviants. Largely though, these are mages, they don't really step into other factions, but it's not super crazy that if, say for example, there is a masquerade breaking vampire, they will get involved if the actual Camarilla is not doing anything. Or, another actual historical example, 1999, The Week of Nightmares. I have a video on this, but that was the awakening of Zapasathura, the antediluvian for Clan Ravnos. The technocracy got on that very quickly. They have orbital laser, like sunlight mirrors, to immediately beam the vampire. And they also made a giant cover story, so no one remembers that that happened. Now you might hear that, and I think rightly so, think, man, the technocracy is pretty cool. They want some good things for humanity. I think I can trust them. No, you shouldn't. Because they're not good. Obviously no one is. But the technocracy believes in working consensus and ascending humanity through like controlling people. Like keeping people docile with being reliant on outside economic issues. Like the technocracy is keeping you poor, essentially. Or putting brain chips in nanomachines in your body to literally change the way you think. Or completely brainwash you through like society, the news you intake, the media you consume, everything. That's the New World Order. They also like funded the Nazis and stuff like that. They're totalitarian, very controlling, not good people. And the actual top brass of the technocracy are so ascended in living in these like utopia of the technocracy. They're living in reality constructs where it's exactly the consensus they want. And so they view everything very in a binary, where they're like, yeah, you know, just make Earth like this. Like the reality I created, why can't you do that? It's like all the worst aspects of like a multi-billion-dollar company and government baked into one shitty Illuminati. But they are very fun. I love them a lot because they don't view magic as magic, they view it as science and technology. Every technological development has been in some way promoted by the technocracy, viewing it very slowly throughout history. They don't want to just roll up in the 1400s with like, I don't know, flying cars, laser guns. They don't want to do that because inherently people wouldn't believe it possible. We're a lot more willing to believe something if it's slow and gradual. And there are so many fun groups of the technocracy, like the New World Order. Like I said, they're literally like a Men in Black issue. If you believe something different, you saw a monster, no you didn't, flash pen from Men in Black, they'll get you, they'll erase your memory. The New World Order is literally puppeting the world to believe things and are stamping out any belief of the supernatural. There's also Iteration X, which are very much the Mechanicus. They're the Mechanicus. They want everything to be robot, and they want you to be robot. They will put machine parts into you. Also, they have Terminators. They also do reality math. They can manipulate time, but because they're predicting it through mathematical calculations. That's how they do their like future foresight powers. There's also my favorite, the Syndicate. The Syndicate are economic mages, Shadow Wizard Money Gang. They purely make the money for the technocracy. Therefore, they're kind of in control. They kind of run everything because they fund the entire operation. And they have an alternate version of the Prime Circle that is literally economics. It's called Primal Utility. If you read the actual like dot levels in the sphere, eventually it's going to turn into Cruelty Squad dialogue. Prime is like the manipulation of quintessence, like of matter. And so Primal Utility is the concept of investment, diversification, reimbursement, or liquidate. It's all in economic terms. You can take matter and invest it into something else. Or if you get really, really strong with this at like tip 5, you can liquidate asset, which is like deleting a person from existence. It's very cool. I love them so much. So these two groups, the Nine Traditions and the Technocracy, are those really fighting in what is known as the Ascension War. The war for how Ascension is going to be dictated, who is in control, who is operating consensus on Earth. That's really the goal. Everyone has different views of what consensus of reality should be. But they're not the only. There are three more. We'll go in levels of severity, but the first one is the Disparate Alliance. Now, these two groups, Nine Traditions, Technocracy, obviously two big factions. There are a lot of different groups of mages that denied joining either of them, and in some way have been stamped out or reduced to something much, much smaller. Essentially, these are the third-party options when the main two things don't look cool enough. I'm specifically hinting at one friend in particular, and you know who you are. But with the invention of the internet, all of these different groups found that, like, oh, hey, we're not alone in hating these two losers. Like, hell yeah. So they formed the Disparate Alliance, where they really will work together and make sure they're not going to get wiped out. And they're very cool. I love the actual factions in here. There are so many, but there's some fun stuff. Like, for example, the Children of Knowledge. Way back in the day, these were like a bunch of alchemists, scientists, scholars, viewing magic in this very scholarly lens. And a lot of these circles were the first ones to actually join the Order of Reason. And even some of them were part of the Order of Reason way back in the day, but their actual beliefs were getting cracked down on really hard. So they left and formed their own group, which they were originally part of the Nine Traditions until an event where a dude known as the Great Betrayer showed up. It's okay. I can't get into everything. I apologize. But this is another event like the Avatar Storm. It either happened, didn't happen, whatever. They disbanded, and later, in like modern day, the 1900s, they came back. Now rebranded as like way more rave styled. But they came back specifically with a new invention, LSD. I am also as surprised as you that the Technocracy didn't invent LSD. They did, because they wanted to use psychedelics to ascend in some way and gain higher knowledge. So if you want to take a lot of drugs, trip hard, and see God, these are your mages. But the thing I really like, and if you've seen my Trench Crusade content, you understand where I'm coming with this. I am a huge fan of seeing different forms of cultures, beliefs, everything in like fantasy, in media. I just like seeing it. Honestly, because I think Tolkien fantasy is cool. I like high fantasy, like Western European fantasy stuff, but there's a lot of other cool things to pull from. That's really it. So there's a lot of cool examples of this, like the Kopalé, Polynesian mages who really kept to preserve their culture when colonization came for their islands and their lands. They're very cool. There's also the Ngoma, who are Central African. Specifically, they came from Egypt and Nubia, but now they're in Central Africa. These are mages who were really affected by the slave trade. They were hit really hard, and they kept in these tiny circles trying to preserve their ways of life. And they're another drop in the box of African WoD lore goes hard. I'm just gonna say it. One day I will have to make a video on all the shit going down in Africa. Whoever made it is going hard. It's insanely cool. Or the Taftani, who originally are like flying carpet, genies in bottles, like that specific type of like Middle Eastern magic. And they've, again, been stamped out. None of the other traditions like them because they're very open. They believe in the freedom and the open expression of magic. Nowadays, they are really these like separate individual people all working the similar goal of expressing themselves. The way they do this, they're in Dubai right now. You know that sick architecture in Dubai? That's wizards. It's so insanely goofy how often that answer comes up. Genuinely, reading through the disparate factions, there's just a lot of really good story potential. I really like that aspect of it. Let's start getting a little more negative. The Marauders, the mad ones. They are crazy wizards. Insane wizards who have been broken in some way by magic. These are mages who are trapped in that quiet, and as such, they are essentially bubbles of reality warping madness. It's like Malkavians, but worse, actually, somehow worse. But it's not enough that it's gonna like expose magic to the world. The way this is put in the book is through the Bigfoot effect. It's that thing where, oh man, Bigfoot, he's standing right there. Let me get a picture. And suddenly, through some random thing, the picture is blurry. That's really how it goes. It's like those moments where you blink and then suddenly like a crazy thing you were seeing is gone. Like say you're walking down the street, someone passes you and suddenly you thought a car was like gonna go on the street, but it's a horse-drawn carriage. You blink and suddenly it's a car. Like it just was never there. Other times they're a lot more deliberate in what they want to do, but it's all through this tinge of like insanity. These are mages really hitting that specific vibe of they saw forbidden knowledge and their brain couldn't handle it. Saw a great old one, they read a name they shouldn't, something is messing with their brain, where it can also be argued they have complete sanity, like they're more sane. And wizards kind of refer to them as forces of nature, less than like a group of people, because their actual goal is really nebulous because it doesn't make a lot of sense, but they do a lot of damage. A big thing they like to do is what the book calls zoo terrorism. They don't like magically blow up a zoo. They instead open a portal to like different dimensions and start pouring out monsters. It causes a lot of damage because suddenly there's a dragon through the mall. Go deal with that dragon. A lot of times the places they do this is like the doorstep of very important people, and sometimes they'll stick around and watch, but like try dealing with like a dragon or a horde of goblins running through a mall while also avoiding paradox. That is really, really hard because reality is gonna start freaking the fuck out that this is happening, and yeah, good luck trying to kill a dragon while still maintaining consensus in some way with your magic. It's hard. They're very fun, and they're utilized to at least throw some wild bullshit at the player. This is the method that they're built to be. And lastly, the Nefandi. The Nefandi are a group you might have heard whispers of in World of Darkness stuff. The Nefandi are probably the most evil group in World of Darkness, mainly because their goal is to destroy everything. They want reality to cease to exist. What is the reason for it? It's nebulous, like I've said. Are they serving dark gods from beyond the stars who aren't actually like aliens, they're just spirits? It's the whole thing. But really it reads to me as like extreme magical nihilism. That concept where like, yeah, reality is fake and the world's gonna end one day, so what if we caused it? There are other Nefandi members who view this in that aspect of, yeah, if I bring about the apocalypse, I'll have like a seat in hell, essentially. I will rule over this new land. No, that is not the goals of the group in the actual higher members of the Nefandi. And again, for mysterious reasons. It was written for a while that it was for like these astral beings, but there is a really hefty chance that that was made up by the Nefandi to obfuscate what they're doing. They are layered and layered of secrecy. They've infiltrated like every group. There are a lot of Nefandi in the traditions, in the technocracy, not the Marauders because they're insane and you can't really infiltrate them, which it's also noted, they're kind of winning, honestly. How they have positioned themselves is they are like the arms dealers. They're selling weapons to both the traditions and the technocracy. So they're puppeting everything to that end where they can destroy things. And one of the main things they can do with modifying consensus is by making everything suck ass. Like they make the world actively a worse place. They're the ones who make World of Darkness the World of Darkness. There's a lot of different subgroups that there are. There's little satanic cults. That's a thing with the Nefandi. However, it's really like there's like puppet master controlling the group and organizing it when they're targeting like young, angry teenagers to make them more angry. There is the Hammer Security Response, a group of Christian mercenaries who are specifically trying to bring about the second coming of Christ so they can be Christ's army. Again, a lot of these members are not members of the Nefandi, they're being controlled by them. There's the Decandi, who are actively controlling pop culture and are the ones really pushing for like unhealthy body expectations, paparazzi, making everything very public. That's the Nefandi making the world worse. Also, Wall Street. Funnily enough, in the book, it's just like Wall Street. It's controlled by them. It's gonna make the world worse. Based, I guess. So that's the thing. The Nefandi are really clearly written to be like the bad guys you can throw in your game. Are they like infernal cultists? Are you going with that vibe? Or are you going for like top executive shadow puppet government thing? They're written to hit every single bad that could exist. So I do think the Nefandi are kind of like not as fun. I don't think they're as fun as like the Marauders, but the fun of the Nefandi would come from individual creativity in your game. But yeah, that is Mage the Ascension. Like I've said many times, I want to cover it more, but I don't want to like deprive Warhammer 40k stuff. I eventually want to do Pathfinder stuff, and Trench Crusade content that drops in the future. I am personally a variety lore channel. I don't like the idea of only making one genre or one universe's videos, I would get really bored very fast. So if I did Mage, it wouldn't replace anything. It would just go on the scheduled docket that I don't have. I just make things that I think sound fun. But yeah, that's it. If you want to do the YouTube stuff, be appreciated. Major shout out to my channel members who make these videos possible. And a huge shout out to my top tier channel members, Ultra Mega Jesus and Czar Shadow. Absolute legends to both of you. Thank you so much. And yeah, see ya.